Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're listening from. I'm Ellen Ermer, and I'm one of the co-chairs for the LED Lean Enterprise Division, and we're just going to go through a couple logistical items initially, and then we'll be turning it over to our speaker. And the presentation will be Visual Daily Management Revealed.
So today I want to talk to you about visual daily management and reveal to you how visual daily management works in a healthcare setting. So what we're talking about, the example I'll bring to the table today will all be from hospitals and especially laboratories that my team, who is a team of global healthcare consultants, have worked with during the past couple of years. So let's dive into the matter of visual daily management. What I want to go through with you today is first a quick introduction for those of you who don't know what visual management is. And then we're taking a look at daily visual management. And there's two main elements that I'm going to go over with you. One is a board to visualize your metrics. And the second one is the process in order to successfully measure your metrics on a daily basis. And in the end, we're going to talk about what key metrics should look like. So what success looks like of metrics you will have on that board. As an introduction to visual management, there's nothing better than Frederick Barnard, who said, a picture is worth more than 1,000 words. And I think that rings true for pretty much all of us, if you so will. So what I want you to take away from this talk, from this next hour that we are spending together, is I want you to learn what are meaningful metrics to manage your operation wherever you work. How does a visual daily management board look and feel in order to manage your metrics on a daily basis? So what does best practice look like? I also want you to be able to identify the challenges that come with not reaching your goals, not reaching your key performance indicators that you set out to reach, as well as take a look at what it takes to really get to the root cause and countermeasure that effectively to improve your process performance if you fall short. So looking at visual management, what I would love to know from you is, and I'm going to start another poll here, do you have currently visual management in your organization? Are you using this as a tool or not? So let's take a look at the results in a minute before we get into visual management. I see 50% already voted, so thank you for your active participation. And I will share with you the poll once we get to 80–90%.
I'll close it in a minute. People are still responding.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
All right, so let's see what it looks like for your organization.
Oh, shoot.
70% of you have answered yes, we're using some type of visual management. So congratulations. That is the first step and it's super important. 25% of you have answered no, we don't use that yet. So for you, take a look at the power of visual management. If we're looking at visual management, there's three basic types of visual management. There is visual displays, and you're all familiar with those. I'm very, very sure of it. Visual display can be, and that's the photo here on the left-hand side, can be anything that you label in order to figure out what's going on, what's inside a drawer, what's inside a cabinet, what's on top of your desk. So the picture that I'm showing here is a little station at a laboratory technician with all the things that she needs in order to look at cultures and work with cultures. So these labels make it perfectly clear where things are, where they belong, and partially if you post an SOP, standard operating procedure, what the procedures are. The second type of visual management is visual metrics, and you all have done it, I'm pretty sure. Visual metrics is create a graph, post a graph. It can be a Pareto chart, can be a histogram like the ones you see here, in order to take a look at how your metrics perform over a month, over a year, over a decade. And so this is how you can visualize your metrics. It's not very difficult. Excel is easily accessible to most of us. And then the third element of visual management is visual controls. And visual controls are you're trying to create an error-proof environment so that people can easily adhere to standards. You might be familiar with andon lights, for instance, if you work in a factory setting. What you can see here is these are molecular reagents, and they're color-coded in green, red, and blue by the type of reagent, so that if the technicians uses these, they can easily see at a glance if they use the right strip that they're going to input into instrumentation. So we have the visual displays, visual metrics, and the visual controls. And visual daily management pulls all of this together into one process, how to operate this system. So visual daily management is what the name says. We're managing our KPIs, our metrics on a daily basis. Why is that important? That is important because most of us look at metrics only monthly, but by that time, the process has already been executed for a full month. You get a result after the fact. If you manage your daily metrics on a daily basis, then you can prevent your monthly metrics from failing. So that is why we're focusing on visual daily management. What we want to install is a simple visual method to compare expected versus actual process performance. So we need two components. We need something to visualize this. So in this example, I'm going to show you a board, but you can set this up like a physical board, but you can set this up virtually as well as a board on a big screen that you post wherever you work. The board should be displayed in a central location with the metrics visualized easily to understand. And we're going to talk about this in a little later. The board alone doesn't cut it though. It's like you put equipment into a location or buy new equipment and you keep your processes the same, then you've just automated the process, but doesn't mean the process performance changes. And so in order to change the process performance, we also want to perform on a daily basis stand-up huddle meetings. So this is a short meeting, every shift for your supervisor, for your employees. There should be handoffs in between shifts so we know what happened, the shift before. You want to identify issues to correct them before performance is affected. And you want to use root cause and countermeasure tools to implement those corrections in a sustainable way. So this is the two elements that I'm going to teach you today. What could a best practice visual daily management board look like? And what is the process we should implement in order to make this work? So let's start with the board. This is an example of a physical board. As I said, you can create templates and put this virtually onto a screen to get it out of the way, as long as it's displayed really prominently in your location, not hidden somewhere in a conference room. The visual daily management board has a couple of really important elements. The first one being we want to identify 3 to 5, not more, key performance indicators to display on a daily basis. First thing is you're going to brainstorm with your team 3 to 5 performance indicators. And then they will be displayed, and I'm going to show you this in more detail on the next slide, in the first horizontal row of this board. The second row then are your monthly KPIs. So the 3 to 5 KPIs that you've identified once a month, you're going to pull them on a monthly basis because you also want to see trends, right? You want to see what an outlier is, a common cause or special cause. And then the third horizontal row is an action plan template where you can root cause and countermeasure on the spot before the problem gets bigger on a daily basis. So we'll go over this too. The left-hand side on the board then has an area where you can put up staffing schedules, vacation schedules, anything else you want to communicate to your staff during a daily meeting. On the right-hand side is a little area that we populated with a Kaizen card area, because we think once you have identified the root causes of why your process failed on a given day, there might be short-term fixes to get the process back on track, but the best fixes are those that actually are long-term, sustainable, systematic fixes. And if you can't solve that on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, or within 10 days, then you might want to make this a project. So you might want to do a process improvement project like a Kaizen event or a workshop. And if you decide to do that, Then we have an area here where you can post a Kaizen card, and you can go through the plan, do, check, act cycle PDCA that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, in order to really develop that systemic fix for your process performance. And we'll take a look at that little area in a minute as well. So let's take a look at the first horizontal. How should the area look like where you have your individual KPIs posted? Remember, 3 to 5. First of all, on the front row, you want to have the category of KPI, and most of you work in the regular categories. I'm sure inventory, productivity, delivery, quality, and safety. So that's the famous 5. But you might have 2 productivity goals instead of the quality goal or something to that extent. So you want to make sure the name of the category of your KPI is known. And then over at number 2 here on the right hand side, you want to give an average how that KPI is performing throughout the entire year. So as we're going through these KPI sheets month by month, and you pull your monthly reporting and post it underneath it, then you also want to see what's my average for the entire year. We're using red, yellow, and green, so end and light functions that you're for sure familiar with. Green means everything is on track, we're good. Yellow means we're on the verge of slipping with the process performance, and red is like we slept, we need to do something now. The row here where the months are marked, you will mark the performance of the entire month. So if your January looked green all along, that month was completely green. If your February, your metrics started slipping, you colored yellow, and then in March, metrics fell down because you didn't do your root cause and countermeasure, or you haven't discovered the root cause yet. And then here in the middle, you will have a box for every day. And once you pull your daily metric, in this case inventory, and it's probably dollars, inventory dollars, you pull your daily metric, you then just color code that box in green, yellow, or red. That's really all you need to do. The minute something is red, however, you want to have that report handy that shows how much did we miss, how big was the miss, in order to get into root cause and countermeasure. But this enables anyone who passes by, be it your supervisor, your manager, be it somebody from the outside, to at a glance see how are you performing with that particular KPI at that point in time. It's really at a glance, and that's what visual management is. You should see within 3 seconds what is going on. Now down here below on the left, we want to have a definition of the KPI, because we really need to know what is it that we're measuring. If we're, for instance, measuring cycle time, then I want to know the process scope, from where to where are we measuring, and the KPI goal, so that somebody who sees your red can judge, what are we judging against, right? What is the goal? So that is your first horizontal row on your board, and this should be updated daily. Now the second row then is, and this is really easy, you pull these metrics then at the end of each month and have a monthly progression, so that you can see any trends that might be happening, which might be interesting for you. There's in laboratories, there's flu season, for instance. Before COVID, there was flu season, and so people knew in flu season we need more inventory, but some people didn't order inventory, so you would always see that dip during flu season where people had to rush order inventory, for instance. And then the third row, this is your action plan template that you should use by writing down the issue. So what happened? I stick with my inventory example. We were out of a certain sample collection device yesterday. And then you're gonna brainstorm on the spot with your entire team. So why were we out? What happened? And really get behind the systematic and the systemic problem, and really try to identify, okay, so then as a countermeasure, you might have 2 choices. If we're out on inventory, we really need that on a daily basis, what we're out on, my collection devices, then I'm probably gonna place a rush order for a short-term fix. But I also want to systemically get behind of why were we out? Did we not predict a spike in inventory? And so you have to really go and get behind the scenes. So your long-term fix might look into, we have to adjust our volumes of what we're ordering, or the cycle in which we're ordering, in order to not run out of inventory again. Rush orders are expensive. You want to make sure you name somebody who's responsible to actually get behind this, what the due date is, and then every day when you walk your board, you would update what percentage of this task is completed. So this is a really easy thing to do on a daily basis and prevents you from these problems becoming bigger problems until they're unsolvable and people don't want to touch them. So the last area, or the next area on the board, is this Kaizen card area. And you can organize this any way you want, because not everybody goes through a PDCA cycle. Some people apply different methods. So you want to make sure you have posted all the projects that are in development. So ideas that are in development that came out of your action plan that you have to vet a little bit more in order to see how feasible this idea is. And then you move into the do stage, where you're actually going and you're executing that process improvement initiative or whatever it takes to address the problem. And then after you've executed that, you're gonna do the check phase, where you're gonna take a look at the idea again after implementation. What was the outcome? Did the outcome address the gap that we had in our KPI performance, in our metric performance, or didn't it? So if it didn't, then we have to come up with an additional idea to get back on track, right? And this is when we then get into the act stage, where we either adopt, adapt, or even abandon an idea that didn't pan out the way it should have. So this is your little area to actually address systemic issues. And then the last area, as I said, you can post anything or everything really. Staffing schedules, daily tasks to be completed, updates to standard operating procedure, holiday schedule, celebration, motivational quotes. You can post if there's vendors on site, if you had to call technical service for something, you know, whatever you feel like doing. So with the next slide, I want you to show that an example from a customer in Bronson Methodist Hospital in Kalamazoo, Michigan, who we just went through this whole visual daily management exercise with, and they wanted to start their first boards. And if there's one thing in Lean that you need to keep in mind, is don't let excellence get in the way of bettering, right? So what you need to do is, sometimes it takes little steps in order to get to the end result, because this is continuous improvement. So we always want to make sure that what you put in place is better than what was before, right? And so here's their first take on the board, and you can see there's still a lot of work to be done, but it is a start. On the left-hand side, they have a board where they have their 5 categories: quality, delivery, inventory, productivity, and safety, or these are their categories, but they haven't pulled their metrics daily yet, right? And haven't found that, how do I display my daily metrics yet? So you can see they have some reports pulled here. So there's definitely room for improvement for that. So my best guess is this is their monthly performance and not the daily performance yet. On the right-hand side, you have their information board. So they split the boards into 2 because they felt they needed more space, more real estate space. They have things of cap inspection, you know, information. They have inventory that needs to be reordered. They have a QC section in here, then general announcements, staffing, instrumentation, what has to be done. And so this is their first take on how to do this. And as you can see, we're happy they started their journey. We will mentor and coach them along the way in order to make sure at the end this looks like what best practice looks like. So they're well on their way. They're very motivated, and I'll show you a little video clip later on how they conduct their board walks, because they started doing this daily. Second point I want to make is daily management, visual daily management is a team effort. And this is an example of a customer in Liverpool in the UK, where we started brainstorming the right KPIs to display on the board with them. And as you can see from the right-hand side, the amount of KPIs that came to mind under training, safety, quality, delivery, inventory, and productivity is immense. There's a lot of different KPIs that came to mind. So how do we pick and choose? And we have to do this as a team. It doesn't help if you do this as a vacuum, as a manager, and force this onto your employees, because updating these daily KPIs should be a team effort. The onus shouldn't be on you as a manager. The onus should be on your entire team. So what you want to do, you want to distribute the pulling of the different metrics amongst your team members in order for all of them to take responsibility and contribute to this effort. So at the same token, you're going to choose team members to brainstorm the right KPIs for visual daily management. So that's super, super important. Now, what do you do if you end up with 20 KPIs that people think are 20 metrics that people think are important? First of all, you're going to look at how do these metrics perform today? Because there's a feel-good mentality. So there's people that set up their boards with metrics that perform superior. They're all green all the time. But that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to implement a process whereby you're improving your process performance on a daily basis. So what you want to pick is, you want to pick KPIs where you're struggling and not feel good KPIs. Because if the board is all the time green, then there's no purpose of standing in front of it talking. And so this team for sure dwindled down their KPIs to the right 5 or 6. But in the beginning, there was a lot of different KPIs that they came up. So this was really a quick look at the board. How are we setting this up? Who's involved in setting a board up? So this is an exercise that you can do, pulling your team for 2-3 hours into a room, brainstorming KPIs, brainstorming the layout of your board, because everybody is individual. And then see how you can make this a reality. So once you've decided on that as a team, the next step is, let's implement a process to actually work and update on this board. And I want to open another poll for you and ask you, do you currently execute a daily huddle meeting, or is this something you've never done? So I'm seeing at the moment we have 61% no, 34% yes. This is perfect. All right. I'm going to close the poll, and we end up with 61% no and 34% yes. So congratulations to everybody who said yes. This is fantastic. This is one of the most important tools of daily management, is visualizing, what you're doing, and motivating your staff in order to very openly share how you're performing. For everybody who wants to learn how to do this, let's go to it. So as with everything, there is a process behind running these daily huddles and the daily management boards. And we're going to go through each of these process steps. There's the daily huddle itself. Then there's us identifying the challenges that occurred the day before, root cause and countermeasuring, problem solving, then preparing the metrics for the next day and updating the board. So let's take a look at the daily huddle itself. So here's guidelines for a daily stand-up huddle meeting. And I tell you what, you will get pushback the first time you implement this. You will hear sentences like, oh my God, I can't afford to be away from my desk for 20 minutes, 30 minutes on a daily basis during these huddles. I don't want to participate. You will hear resistance. But in the end, the first meeting will be longer because everybody has to get used to the new way of working. But then these meetings should be 10 minutes minimum max. And for you as a lead, as a supervisor, or even as a manager, if you are the one facilitating this board, this will give you a pulse of your employees. So not just of your metrics, because you can look around, you can see how your team feels. Are they happy? Are they excited? Are they tired? Are their team members missing? It's fantastic in order to really get a pulse of what's going on in your workforce. So keep it 10 minutes max. Announce new team members, introduce visitors. I've been part of plenty huddle meetings where I was introduced when I did lean assessments in laboratories, and they announce what I'm doing. Perfect scenario. Give kudos, rewards, recognitions. I've seen supervisors give motivational quotes. Focus on day-to-day activities. That's the important part. This is not the place to discuss strategy. That should be an offsite meeting with people. This is not the place to do any type of talk through any type of employee struggles on a bigger scale. that you have with certain employees, that is an offline meeting, right? So focus on day-to-day activities, hold them in the work area in front of the visual daily management board. If you have more than one shift, please do this by shift, so the previous shift knows what was discussed or what they need to pay attention to. Make them stand-up meetings. So try to have people really stand around unless it's in their work area where they are. Rotate facilitators. So put the responsibility on the team to pull different metrics and have them report the metrics. Also, if you rotate facilitators and you go on vacation, then you have somebody to actually follow up, and the whole process doesn't fall by the wayside because you're not there one day. Document your decisions, actions, next steps on that action plan part of the visual daily management board. No meetings minutes needed. Nobody's going to read them in an email anyways afterwards. So everything is documented right here and then and can be followed up by tomorrow. So here's a little video. Unfortunately, we can't present you with sound, so I'm going to voice over this video. And again, this is from Bronson. This was the first day they ever executed their visual daily management, and it was very interesting to us. So Eric, the supervisor, goes over the board for the first time, and his topics are he announces that there are several places where samples can be dropped off in central processing, and that some people drop them off at the wrong spot. So he wants people to pay attention to, if they see samples being dropped off in the wrong spot, that they please correct that and not just take them, but also alert the people working in that area that is the wrong spot for the sample, so you can actually improve and fix that. He's talking about what went on the night shift with processing. He's talking about who's responsible for making service calls. And then in the end, he is assigning different team members to come forward, and I'm not showing all of the clip because you can't hear it, to come forward and explain some of the metrics on this board. But so it's a wonderful start. So once you identify how you want to do your daily huddle, how do you want to conduct that, and have gotten a cadence together, if you so will. The next 3 items when you stand in front of the board with your team is identify challenges, root cause and countermeasure them, and go into problem-solving mode. And for those of you, I think all of you are familiar with the terms root cause and countermeasure, but I'm going to give a brief definition. So the root cause is what really caused a problem to happen. And that problem should be eliminated by improving the process. The countermeasure then are an action, short-term or long-term, to reduce or eliminate these root causes that are preventing you from ultimately reaching your goals. So root cause and countermeasure tools, and there's a whole toolbox, and I don't have the time, unfortunately, to go into them. One of them being the 5 why tool, which you might have heard of, which is asking why at least 5 times in order to see what the real problem is behind something. So it's always a good idea to use these tools to analyze issues or find opportunities proactively for improvement that then become effective and permanent solutions. That's what you're really looking for. You're not trying to mask a symptom. So for example, if your car leaks oil and you keep refilling oil, then you're masking a symptom. But if you actually go to your mechanic and have the leak fixed, then that's a systemic fix. And so that's what we're after. We're after the systemic fix. Sometimes you have to short-term fix something real fast, like the rush order that I brought up earlier, and then get behind why we're not ordering the quantities that we need, which is then my systemic fix. So going through root cause and countermeasure, you want to first identify the problem or opportunity for improvement, and you're doing this right there and then with your team. Then analyze the problem using these root cause and countermeasure tools. I would encourage to use a 5 why because it's easy. It's very intuitive. Develop ideas for potential countermeasures and then figure out which ones make sense to implement. So you're brainstorming this with your team on the spot because you have all the brain power of your team right in front of the board. And there is a solution, and people are aware usually of things that don't go well and have the best ideas of how things can be fixed, because they work your processes in and out. So you're tapping into that human potential that is right in front of you in order to get your permanent fix. And then, fourthly, you're going to implement and sustain the countermeasures. So here's an example of a root cause and countermeasure board at St. Mary's Hospital in Ontario, so in Canada. So what they do, if you look at the middle picture first, they use as their root cause and countermeasure tool the Ishikawa or fishbone diagram. And that diagram works with you stating the problem in that big round circle, which is the head of the fish. And then you're brainstorming the cause for that problem to occur. In their case, in the categories equipment, process, people, management, environment, and materials. And by doing this, by looking at the primary and secondary causes, you can filter out which are the ones that we should address. And when you do that, then you can see that on the left-hand side, they actually track how and what is being addressed. So they have work in progress, they have the ones that are almost done, new ideas, their success, and recognition. Super important, recognize your team for getting this done. Recognition is very, very important to motivate people to keep doing this. On the right-hand side, then these guys in Ontario also have their lab-wide huddle procedure. So this is not just one part of the lab, this is in the entire organization everywhere where there's laboratories. So this is their SOP that you can look up, if somebody's new to this team and doesn't really know what's going on yet, and forgotten all about, when they get trained the first time because they were still drinking from the fire hose. So this is fantastic. They have their SOPs visually posted right at their board. This is a very good example of how you can set this up. So once we'd identified our root cause and countermeasured it, and have identified what we want to work on and updated the action plan with that, then the next step is, let's take a look at the metrics that we actually display on the board and how we can prepare them and how we can manage them. So we talked a little bit about that this should be teamwork, right? At this point in time, when we're setting up a visual daily management board, we're very transparent of what success looks like. So what are we measuring and what is the goal, as well as how are we performing? And that is something that for laboratories at least is new. If I would sit in front of a laboratory audience and I would ask you, how many of you know what your KPIs for the year are? Most people would look at me, unless they're supervisors or managers, and say, oh, no idea. Maybe there's a turnaround time goal. And so for the first time in an organization setting this up, it's crystal clear to all the employees what we're working towards. What's our goal for the year? Where do we want to go with our key metrics? And that might be an aha moment, and people might really embrace this. So they're visible. They're not hidden, right? It also helps us to proactively manage our KPIs because, as I said before, we're focusing on daily improvements to our process, which then in the end benefits us every month when we pull these what we call lagging indicators. And we're going to get to this in a moment. So typical KPIs everywhere and anywhere are turnaround time or time to results, productivity, quality, and inventory. So if I look at a laboratory example, the turnaround time is either measured in hours or days, depending on how long the process is. We want to have a scope of the metric, so it could be sample receiving to reporting out results. You always measure current performance and target goal. For productivity, in laboratories, it's not common to look at the number of samples processed per FTE per hour. And you can have as a scope either the entire workforce, or like we did here, you have just the inoculation staff, and then you have a different metric for processing or different metric for running additional testing. Quality metric could be, we brought up here the number of subplates. So in a microbiology laboratory, if a sample is waiting too long to get into an incubator, or if it's waiting too long between process steps, then the bacteria that grow on that sample might be larger than that you can actually detect anything. And so if you have these long wait times and don't get the samples moved along right away, then you might be confronted with a sample that has to be re-examined, or we say replated onto a different plate in order to start the cycle, the growth cycle all over again, which can be 24 hours, which can be 36 hours, so you're losing that time. And so you want to measure the number of these, what we call subplates, the rework that you're doing. And then there's inventory, which could be, consumable dollars of the consumables that are stored in the laboratory. So these are typical metrics that we see in a laboratory environment. Now, what do all of these have in common? They're lagging indicators or lagging metrics. And so that means you usually pull them on a monthly basis after the process has been executed for full months, and then you stand in front of them and wonder why things went not the way as planned. So looking at metrics, you really need to take a look at, are my metrics leading metrics, which they should be on the daily board. So leading metrics are metrics that measure the output of a deeper level process or a single process step. So for instance, you all heard about turnaround time. So turnaround time, for instance, is if I look at, I'm ordering a book from Amazon. So I put my order in on a Monday, and they tell me I can get the book on Friday because I have to wait until all the 120 people in front of me that ordered the same book have been delivered. Then my turnaround time is Monday through Friday. That's how long I have to wait to get the book. Now, my leading metric would be cycle time, which means we would measure everything that's going on within Amazon. Somebody received the order, somebody printed the order, then there's probably warehouse pulls the book, the warehouse packaged the book gets shipped, and how long is this on the truck. So every part of this process, if I measure how long every part takes, then that gives me my cycle time. So turnaround time combines the cycle time plus the wait time. So if I measure it after every process step, then I can still, after the second process step, if something takes too long or something is sitting there waiting, I can still turn the whole turnaround time around and decrease that by making sure nothing waits the rest of the process. So leading indicators are what we're looking for a daily management process. Lagging indicators are the ones we're measuring in large intervals at the end of the month. So looking at the entire value stream, I know you can't read what's on the value stream, but just to make this clear at a glance, if I measure my leading indicators after every process step, and that's the snail, I have my lagging indicator move the needle left or right, depending on up or down, depending on where I want to go with it. So we're looking into leading indicators for the daily management board. Can't say it enough. So how to get to my leading indicators? I need to evaluate the current performance of my overall KPIs. Then, if I'm really thorough, I'm going to create a value stream map of the process that does not meet my KPI goal, because this is where I want to focus. And then I want to brainstorm meaningful leading indicators for each high-level step of this process and establish daily and weekly goals. And is this a guessing game in the beginning? Absolutely, right? But you got to start somewhere. So don't let perfect get in the way of better. Start somewhere, and you can always adjust your goals up or down if you see that the goal didn't fit the first place. So here's examples of leading metrics. Quality metrics can be rework, errors, wrong containers that you receive, requisition forms with missing data, specimens being read multiple times, more than necessary, corrected results, subcultures. Delivery metrics can be anything that's waiting to be accession, to be read, to be follow-up, whatever waiting, anything that really impacts your delivery metric. Inventory metrics we mentioned before, number of stock outages, rush orders, expired reagents that you have to discard. Then there's productivity metrics, number of specimens, accession, process, the percentage of the staff cross-trained, don't forget that. Hours overtime. And then safety metrics could be, and safety is something where people say, well, there's a safety incident happening. I can't prevent that. Oh, yes, you can. There's leading indicators for that, because you can take a look at the number of scheduled preventive maintenance performed, which can help your equipment to be up to date and not failing, or the number of your employees trained in injury prevention. So with safety, you have to be a little creative, but you will find leading metrics for safety. So what's left? The last thing that we want to do is update the board, right? And so ideally that happens in the morning before you have the daily huddle. So if you have 3 shifts, there's no need to update the board and the metrics between all 3 shifts. You're updating the metrics once, but if something was going on in the first shift that the second shift need to be aware of, write a note on the board in that free text area that you have saying, equipment access failing, we call the technician, don't use it. You know, so update just the day-to-day things. Pull the metrics once, update your board. Ideally, this is not you, supervisor, manager. This is really the shift leads. This is people along the process that update the board. And then in the morning, you have your daily huddle once the board is updated. And you do this by shift by shift. So the important takeaway here is your daily visual data management board should be updated by individual task owners. Don't put this on just one person. Before the daily huddle meeting to reflect the performance of your KPIs the day before. And then once a month, you're updating your KPI charts. As far as the Kaizen cards go on the right-hand side or the long-term projects, best practice that I've seen, I was in Denver at the University of Colorado in Aurora. And what they had little action teams. So when they had a process that didn't perform and there was a long-term action plan needed, the lab supervisor stood in front of the team and said, hey, can we build a quick action team that for the next 10 days looks into this and gives us a progress report every day? And they really had people volunteering because people liked having their brain challenged, you know, outside of the daily routine. And so they formed these 2-3 people action teams that then for 10 days would go and try to inquire, do their root cause and fix these issues. And they reported back to the board on their progress. So that was really fantastic and a lot of very positively received from the employees. So at this point, that is all the information I wanted to convey today. I could not have done this without my team. So I really have to thank my team in especially Abdul Motleb in the UK and Annette Monterubio here in Arizona for contributing, going out there, implementing these changes and providing me with pictures and examples from customers. I could not have done this presentation without them. So thank you very much. At this point, we'll open it up for questions, I think.
Thank you for a very clear and informational presentation.
Sure.
For some people had null on it, so people could not indicate where they were from, although some folks did answer via the question, things like Colorado, Buffalo, New York, St. Louis, Illinois, Florida,
Awesome.
etc. So I think there was some confusion there. I don't know what happened. One of our first questions is, I guess, well, the question initially was, will you be covering how to accomplish this in a virtual environment? So maybe I'll just change,
yeah,
modify that to accomplish this. What are your words of wisdom in regards to accomplishing this in a virtual environment?
Okay, I can definitely answer that. So as we're working a lot virtual today, as I said, you can have the board virtually. So I don't know what you're working with in a virtual environment. If you work with Teams or Zoom, you can have a quick daily huddle meeting for 5 to 10 minutes where you pull in your team on a virtual call, and you can set up this board completely virtually. So you can have all of the elements of this board as slides if you so will. So if you don't want to create like a board like you're seeing on my screen, then you can create all of these elements as slides, and you can really run through the 5 KPIs as slides and then brainstorm with your team on a virtual environment. I would put this slide deck then on a shared drive so that people can update it on a daily basis and then would do exactly the same process. And it does work in the virtual world. I hope this answered the question.
All right, thank you. How is the monthly color established? What if most days were green, but there were a few yellow days, maybe a couple red days?
I would pull an average of your metric performance. So I would say if my goal is to hit 10, whatever that is, and in average you hit 7.5, then establish a threshold of what you consider for your organization a hit or a miss, right? Because sometimes not always 100% is a hit. Sometimes you say, okay, so if I hit 75% of that goal and 95% of that goal, that is still green. Some people also establish a stretch goal, so don't forget that. So you might have the goal of I have to hit 8, but you tell your team they have to hit 10. So anything between 8 and 10 then would also be green, but you have to establish that scale in your institution.
Thank you.
Sure.
There's a couple people that also agreed with you and
thank you.
Reiterated, don't let perfect get in the way of good, or don't let the desire for perfection get in the way of actual progress.
Thank you.
Another person asked about remote teams. You addressed that. How are you capturing the data and moving into roll-up metrics, i.e. are you using database, tables, paper, etc.?
So really, so there comes the standard lean answer. It depends. So it depends on how your organization is measuring. For instance, if I want to measure sales metrics and you have salesforce.com, then you can extract that through Power BI. So Power BI is a very powerful and easy to use tool in order to extract metrics that are in an Excel format or a CSV format, for instance. And you can set that easily up. You can also set up pivot tables in Excel to then just feed your laboratory information systems, your LIS data or your SIP data into it and get your daily metrics. So this could be very easy. But I know a lot of institutions still struggle with the fact that they can't get good reports. And unfortunately, until IT is getting you the report you need for your daily metrics, I would still start with a manual list, compiling it manually for the time being, until your IT department can help you out with getting you a report that you want. So it's a depend answer how good your organization is with metrics.
I think there's also some challenges I know in many organizations, even if you have powerful tools to display them, to really understand and make sure that the data integrity is there, right? How are we capturing? Where is it coming from?
Right.
So there's a lot of challenges there too, just because you're doing electronically. I think we all have to keep in mind.
It is a garbage in, garbage out situation in a way, but that will surface, right? If you see weird trends over your monthly metrics, you will go behind the scenes and try to figure out why is this off, you know.
Sure. Hopefully you will. Yep.
Yeah, well, you should.
Yeah. Somebody asked if we'll be recording this webinar. Yes, it is being recorded and will be available. Another question is, do you weight metrics?
Do I understand that? So let me try to tell you how I understand that. Do I weight metrics by their importance or by priority? If that's the question, then I would go by what is the overall strategic goal for my organization, and make sure that my metrics align to that overall strategic goal. So whatever I work on is aligned with what we're working towards the year from an organization standpoint. Otherwise, if you have 20 different metrics that are equally important to you, as I said, I would weigh them by which are the ones that needs the most improvement and start working on those. And that give you the biggest bang for the buck, really, because you shouldn't spend 80% of your time on, remember Pareto, 20% of improvement. You should spend 20% of your time to improve 80% of the problem. So then you have to rate and rank the problem, and then take the most problematic metrics where with improvement you can get the most bang for your buck. I hope that answered the question.
Do you recommend displaying lead and lag measures on the same board, lagging measures on the same board?
So the daily management board should be really mostly for the leading metrics, but yeah, you can have, if you have enough space all the way in the bottom, you can put your lagging metrics, because the leading ones roll up into the lagging ones in the end that you report on to whoever in your organization once a month. So sure.
There are some metrics that could drive the wrong behavior. How do you address those?
Yeah, I wish I had an example from you, but for instance, if you have a metric that is let's say you have a field employee and you measure your field employee on how often they're in the field. That's the wrong metric, because you should measure the impact of what that employee does instead of how often they're in the field. Otherwise, this becomes busy work. So if that is the question, then you need to go and brainstorm different metrics in order to drive the right behaviors. You have to change that within your organization. So that's a change management issue, and that's way harder than all of us think it is. But
yes,
you have to make sure your metrics make an impact, right? Yeah.
A couple people have asked about the PowerPoint being available, and yes, we can make it available. I assume you had a PDF, right? We were trying to, or you had a copy. We were trying to load it. There were some issues.
You have
anyway.
a PDF, yeah, and yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and we'll send that out to the folks that have attended. If there's a I'm not quite sure I understand the question here completely, but there's a statement that's, oh, here, he wrote it again. Resolving revolving metrics. Example, delivery 1 month and overtime the next month.
Let me try to understand that. So if there's a conflict between metrics resolution, resolving revolving metrics. Okay. So the way I understand this, okay, I've identified my 5 metrics that I want to showcase and highlight because they all need improvement. If I see a metric performing 6 months out of the year really well, and I feel there's nothing, and we've improved everything we wanted to, and we feel this metric is secure and stable, take it off and put a metric on that needs more attention. So you can do that. And then the other thing, if you have revolving, I hope your metrics are not revolving every month, you have completely different metrics. But if you have to put a 6th metric up, do it. If you have the space for it, I mean, don't be married to 3 to 5, right? It's just a lot of work to pull daily reports on these metrics or daily performance on these metrics. So I don't want to overburden the organization with looking at metrics that have no merit being worked on. Of course, I've seen boards with 6 metrics, I've seen boards with 7 metrics, and I would drop off the ones that perform over a long period of time really stable, and then replace them with something that needs attention.
Okay, I think, again, asking for the presentation, and I think other than that, there are no other questions. Anybody else have anything else? If you do, can you please post it quickly? Other than that, we appreciate your time, Katja, and great presentation, very clear.
You're welcome.
Concise and easy, some really good tools to understand and use. A couple of people saying thank you. So
thank you all for
again
attending.
For participating.
Thank you for attending.
And a reminder that lots of good, again, solid, I think, foundational information that we can all use and understand. So without anything, if anybody doesn't have any other questions, I don't see that they do, I will let you go, and everybody have a great day. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, everybody. Sure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.